Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Respect, Humility, and Empathy podcast, where we are rethinking differences. We got two guys here who don't know all the answers, who are looking for answers. And it's a show produced for people like you who are also looking for answers. So today we have Mark Addison on here. He is a singer, songwriter, and producer. Mark, I had the pleasure of checking out some of your music before the show. I've got to say, I was really impressed with both the depth and the breadth of the music, which is something I did not expect to encounter. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. And I'm going to kick this over to Isaiah because he knows you better than I do. So I'm going to let Isaiah take it away.
Yeah, so this is Isaiah Diesel. Thank you for joining us today. Very honored to have Mark here today with us. Actually, Mark, did you get to watch the Super Bowl yesterday?
I got to watch till halfway through the halftime show, and then the power went out.
Oh, wow.
Oh, no.
For about 10 miles in every direction. So
You're down in Texas, right?
I'm in Austin. Yeah, I'm outside.
Oh, okay.
So you're at the epicenter. Did you cause that?
Blue
there was a collective. Wah!
Oh, God.
I live out in the country, so I'm on like 4 acres. So the neighbors are far away, but we could still hear the.
Wow.
What?
So Mark, I actually got a little funny story to tell you before we start off. And actually, one of your songs, one of my favorite songs by you, it's actually featured on a movie, Bed of Roses.
Yeah.
Actually has one of my favorite guitar solos of all time. But one of the lines in there is that she's as sweet as turpentine. And at the time, I didn't know what that meant. And I had a girlfriend, and I appropriated the lyric into a poem that I wrote for her. And she was like, she told me, turpentine is like, it's like not sweet. And I was like, I literally had no idea what it meant. I felt so embarrassed afterwards.
Yeah,
but anyway, that's a great song.
It's a wood-based cleaning agent. And
right.
I have to be honest with you, I don't remember the lyrics to that song, so you would have to actually quote that lyric to me if you wanted to talk about it.
Well, it's just a funny story. She actually lived down there in Texas, and so I got to spend quite a bit of time down there. But can you actually tell us just a little bit about yourself, your music career, and just actually, I read that you were from England. Is that right? I don't hear the accent.
Well, give me enough whiskey and you'll hear it. I'm a student of languages, and I love reverting to my old accent. But I was born in England. I came to the United States in 1963 at the age of 6, and I had already attended school in England. I had attended first form. I knew how to read. I was quite an educated boy. And I got plonked into the middle of school number 5 in Yonkers, New York. And I was the only kid in the class who could read. And it made my life just totally weird from then on, because the teacher used to get me up to read in front of the class. And I was, a British kid who was used to wearing shorts and a tie to school, plunked down into Yonkers, New York. My dad was an opera director, so we moved from England so he could work with an opera company in New York. But the culture shock stayed with me for years and years and years.
Wow. Well, I live overseas in South Korea, so I totally I get what you're talking about as far as culture shock. So did you say opera?
Yeah. So
the music just runs in your blood.
Yeah. Well, after we were in New York for 2 years, we moved to Cleveland, Ohio, where my father started the opera department at the Cleveland Institute of Music. And we had 2 grand pianos butted up against each other in the living room.
Wow.
And, he'd have singers over and all kinds of stuff. But I got into into rock and roll pretty early. So it was a strange mix of influences.
Marshall, you got a question?
Yeah. Well, gosh.
It's amazing.
I listened to some of your music, okay, and I kind of want to start there because you had these songs, Begin Again and Damn Fine Day, which I listened to, and I'm like, okay, they sound, I'm like, I'm getting a sense for your sound, and then I went on and I listened to Dream About Her, and all I kept thinking was, it's like Tom Petty went to Hawaii. It's really this kind of cool mix, and I don't know enough about music, so I apologize to speak about it as well or as eloquently as I would like to. But then I listened to something from the Borrowers, and I caught like just the eclectic mixture of sounds that I listened to while listening to these different songs really blew me away, because like, you listen to a band, even if you listen to like Tom Petty, it's a similar, almost homogenous sound. There's a stochastic range, if you will, in which they kind of operate, but they usually don't go out of that. But man, you were all over, but it was all well executed. Usually when a person like, goes all over, they'll do one thing well and then something kind of awful. Like I think of when you two did they did Discotheque or something. I'm like, where are you guys going? You're U2. This is your range, and you're clear off over here, and then they seem to have kind of come back. But how the heck, what's going on there? It's pretty remarkable.
Well, you have to understand that you're looking at a body of work that extends. If you go to my Bandcamp site, I made a concerted effort to put everything up there that I'd ever done.
Mm-hmm.
So there's hundreds of songs, and you're talking about a body of work that started in 1977.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And went up through now. So after I grew up in Cleveland, I had many bands in Cleveland. I had a band called the Generators. That was a really popular band, actually held many records, and they were the inspiration for, actually they were the model for Paul Schrader's movie Light of Day with Joan Jett and Michael J. Fox.
Wow.
And then I had another band called Nation of One, and other bands, and then I moved to LA and started the group The Borrowers, and the female lead singer for that band moved away, and I had to undertake the duties of being a lead singer. But that was in 94. So you're talking about a range of me writing songs from the age of 20 to 63, which is I am now. And so
sorry.
And so you can see why things have changed. When I was a youngster, I wanted to be a rock star, and I tried to play the game, and this and that, and then I moved into producing a lot. And this batch of songs that you're referencing, the ones that Dream About Her and stuff, these came out of a series of songwriting groups that I joined. So I'd been in Austin for a long time. I've been producing a lot of records. I stopped writing for quite a while, but I have some friends who, want to prod each other to write songs. So we have these songwriting groups where you get a prompt, and you have to write a song every week.
Wow.
And some of them you have to include the prompt in the lyric, and some of them they just have to motivate the lyric. But so all of the songs I've written the past 3 years have been from these songwriting groups. I mean, I'm no longer a wannabe rock star, but I love to write. And so that probably would explain, some of the reasons that the style's changed over the years.
Actually, Mark, I have a couple of questions as far as lyrics. And by the way, I'm digging the hairdo. I've been bald for about the last 15 years or so. But
well, I shaved my head in 1990, so.
And then I've got this buzzed haircut.
I had the most embarrassing experience you could imagine with this, because I was kind of doing the comb forward for a while, but then I started losing my hair in the middle. So I started to mark it in with the marker on the weekends to like boost my confidence. And I was in a club one time with a girl, and I wiped my head like this, a really beautiful Korean woman, and she's like, "What's on your face?" And I'm like, "What?" And I went to the bathroom, and I was like, "Man, I got to cut this off." But anyway,
That's a beautiful story, I have to say.
so embarrassing. But yeah, so I've been bald since then. But my question I want to ask you is, it's a two-part question. Is one is, where do you get inspiration from your music? And what do you find harder to write, the actual melody or the lyrics to a song, and how do you combine them? I know it's kind of a loaded question.
Well, let's start with the first one.
Sure.
You know, for most of my life, my inspiration came from the world around me. You know, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. One song I wrote after a friend confided in me about her husband leaving her.
Wow.
I moved to LA, and you grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's, you know, it's not a, I mean, there's a lot of old money there, but and it's a little bit segregated. There's middle class neighborhoods and really, really poor, just demolished, horrible, sad neighborhoods. But they're divided. I moved to LA, and when I moved to LA, I was just shocked. I was stricken by the extremely rich, richer than I'd ever thought of, and the extremely poor lived next door to each other. I mean, in LA, you see the gap between rich and poor more than I think anywhere else in the world. And so one of the first songs I wrote when I got to LA was Mercy Bound.
Oh, I love that song.
Which was ultimately cut by Joan Baez and then also by Edmund McCain. But, you know, it was just about like, you're on this street corner and you know, Rolls Royces are driving by and you're, and the incredibly rich people. And then right in front of the house, there's this, you know, it was a real eye-opening thing. And after I moved to LA, I started to write a lot about the divide between the rich and the poor, and the entitled and the unentitled.
Oh, you're gonna really love Marshall because he's a professed socialist. I think you guys would have a lot to talk about.
I am pretty much as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm Christian socialist here, but so how would you? The other part of the question was, thank you for that, by the way. Thanks a lot. Actually, I love that song. It's one of my favorites. But the other one was, what's harder to write, the lyrics or the melody to match it? And
well, they're both amazingly easy to write, and they're both incredibly hard to write. So I'm working on a song right now. I wrote the lyric in about 5 minutes. And it took me about 4 days to figure out where the melody should go. You know, the song, I don't know if you know this song, but I wrote this song called Damn Fine Day.
Yeah, yeah.
And I wrote that on Inauguration Day.
Wow, I got that.
And I wrote the lyric in about 4 minutes. And I didn't write the music at all. I just sat down at the piano and I started playing and sang it, and that's what came out. So, but you know, there's no real. I think I tend to write both together most of the time. I think for a lot of artists, a lyric and a melody come from above at the same time.
Actually, I have one last question as far as that goes. Is what's the longest a song has ever taken you to write? Have you ever had a song where you just take years? You can write a line here, a line there. You can't really. I know for me, I've written one book, and it wound up taking me about 5 or 6 years because I actually wasn't a father when I started writing it, and then I became a father. So that really changed my perspective on a lot of things. So I had to go back and rewrite it because just quite frankly, the things that I thought before just didn't match up. They didn't align, but that's a much bigger book. But how long would you say maybe is average and maybe your longest that it's taken from beginning to end?
Well, I think, I think if a song hasn't figured itself out in 6 weeks or so, I generally let it go. But I wrote a novelette and I wrote it in 2 months. The best songs, and we'd have to start a whole conversation about sort of what makes a good song. I mean, the best songs come in a half an hour or 10 minutes.
Wow.
And the trick is to not get in the way of letting that song happen.
Wow.
So we have in our minds, we have an editor and we have the creative mind. And the creative mind says, how about this for a line? I woke up this morning. And the editor goes, that sucks. And that's why it's hard to write. And so you get in these places where the editor has gone to sleep or he's thinking about something else, and that's when the real songs come.
Wow.
What do you do to make that happen? Do you do anything to put the editor to sleep?
Scotch.
Go fishing, hang out.
Alcohol.
Alcohol, Scotch.
There's many tricks you can use. I mean, I have counseled other songwriters to go buy a record from a favorite artist that they don't know. They don't know the record, but they know the artist, and put the record on and get a sheet of paper and a pencil and let your editor mind listen to the record and let your creative mind free write. So it's a tricky thing. I think all writers have their own methods, but
I had a question too. What would you say to a person who wants to be an artist but is kind of afraid to take the leap? Because both you and I having kind of this similar outlook on the world is we know that there's a lot of talented people out there, but they're stuck having to submit to the 9 to 5, the grind, if you will, getting shift work or doing office work or whatever, because they just don't believe or feel that they have that talent or that ability to cultivate their inner artist. And then they end up in that rut, and that becomes, that kind of takes off on a mind of its own. What would you say, particularly to a young person who's facing this decision point where I can become a starving artist with a tiny chance I might, actually be successful and sell some music or some art, or I can, take this, 9 out of 10 chance I'm just going to do shift work or office work all my life, but at least I won't be hungry. What do you say to that person?
I think you're cheating us with that question, because the fact is you can do both. I know this from experience, personal experience, if you want to be an artist or a songwriter or whatever, you have to do it because you love it. And you have to do it without fear and without expectations. And you need to support yourself while you do it. I've been lucky in that I haven't always supported myself with music, but I'm singularly lucky. Many fine musicians that I know, fine songwriters, much better songwriters than I am, support themselves with day jobs. So there's no reason to say that you can't do both.
Mm-hmm.
The trick is to hone your talent in your free time until it gets to the point where you have to quit your day job.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Because you're so much in demand, you know?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that
Wow.
answer. But
That's
it's
great.
a real answer, which is practical and good.
Wow.
And then real quick, then as a follow-up, what are some great ways to hone that talent then? You know, in your experience.
Well, you know, I mean, if you want to be a musician, a songwriter, you need to learn an instrument, first of all. When I was 20, I think 1 in 6 people in the United States owned a guitar. It's probably almost everybody by now. Guitar's easy to play. I think the piano is the best. Oh, the meeting has been upgraded by the host and now includes unlimited minutes.
Nice. All right, we'll stick with it then. We don't have to interrupt.
I think the piano is the best instrument to learn to play as a child because it is a graphic interface of how music actually works. And once you play piano, it's much easier to pick up another instrument. But learn an instrument, practice it, love it, experiment with it. Emulate other artists, but don't limit yourself to emulating other artists. Be yourself, come up with, you know, we look at bands like Talking Heads and St. Vincent and some of these other acts that are out there, and it's like, these people did not, you know, they did not try to follow some path. It's like,
they're trailblazers.
And to be a trailblazer, you have to not think about the end result. You have to think about being a trailblazer and making art. And you know, 1% of it will catch on, the rest won't. But you know, if you make art that you believe in, and you never make it, you never become famous, you'll still be totally happy with the art you've made.
Right. Actually, I have a question about the song that you referenced, Damn Fine Day. I heard it and kind of put 2 and 2 together, what you were talking about, but I can't quote the lyrics right now off the top of my head, but I think it was something to the lines of like, we can get past like this like cloud that's been hanging over us. And for me, I mean, genuinely, that's I felt like a cloud had like a dark, ominous cloud that was blocking like certain sunlight rays that we all need. Was not just in the United States but over the world. And so I think having this just a sense of optimism and kind of like just taking a sigh of relief, right? I mean, I was kind of like I was literally, because I live in South Korea, and I'm just like, is this gonna happen? Like, is this transition going to actually happen? Because we know people overwhelmingly, 7 million people said, we do not want this. Like, enough is enough, you know? And I understand, I completely 1 gazillion percent understand the people who are just frustrated with the system. And they say, maybe an outsider can fix this. I get it. I totally get why people initially bought into it. But then when you just, you know, if you want to have an open mind and give him a chance, and like I did, and then it just seemed like this is going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse to the very moment where people are storming the Capitol. And so after you wrote this song, I noticed you didn't immediately release it. If you said that you wrote it right at the inauguration, but what was your feelings after writing that and seeing everything that was going on in between writing it and into what actually happened, and the actual changing of the guard, if you will.
Well, I wrote it, and I think I put it up about 2 days later after I finished orchestrating it.
Oh, okay.
One writes a song like that. Sometimes as a writer, you are sort of the observer in chief. You're the person who tries to distill what you feel, and what maybe you hope everybody else feels. It's an interesting song because it doesn't rhyme. It's a little ambiguous. I love ambiguous songs. It's not a narrative. It's just a sense of place and time. That song was again part of a songwriting prompt. The prompt was inauguration, but my girlfriend and I sat and watched that whole day, and that song just went. I didn't even think to edit it. It was just like free flowing thoughts.
Wow.
And it like I said, it's not. It's poetic in that it isn't poetic.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sort of like the thoughts of like some guy sitting on a couch.
Yeah. Exactly what it is.
So.
Mm-hmm. I have a question then about this kind of off this, based on this. Are you hoping to inspire change with songs like this, or are you just kind of recording your own sentiments? I mean, some artists, they really want to drive home a message, or they want to change the world or start something. Music, of course, is transformative. Music is actually at the heart of every revolution in human history. Every revolution has, rebel songs and so on. So sometimes the goal is to inspire change, but sometimes artists are just kind of making music for the sake of music, or they're capturing their own sentiments. What is the case with you? Are you hoping to kind of wake some people up with your lyrics, or are you just kind of capturing how you feel?
I think it's something in between there. I think a good song happens in your head.
Mm-hmm.
The listener, a good song, it happens in the head of the listener. That's why I love ambiguous songs, because they mean different things to different people.
Right.
And that's okay, by the way, right? It's okay if I take away a different meaning than what you intend.
I think it's wonderful, and
Okay.
I'm not I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I like to put songs out there that give just enough to make you maybe think.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not trying to change the world, and I'm also not doing it as a total sort of, this is what I feel. It's I write songs that I hope prick you a little bit and make you go, oh shit, I remember I felt that way, or
it's kind of like Alan Watts. You can take him or leave him, but what he says should inspire some kind of thought process on your part, and it could be transformative. Best case.
Yeah. I mean, if I was a rock star, I may answer the question differently, but I'm not. I'm a guy who produces records and occasionally writes a song, and I have no agenda at all when I write. The only agenda, internal agenda, is to write a piece that has poignancy and gives the listener an opportunity to self-reflect a little bit.
Man, that's great. Actually, speaking about self-reflection, I think this quarantine really gave us a chance to sit down and, think. And ironic, it happened in the year 2020, right? So we could look back with some hindsight and just examine, like, not only where our lives are going, but just the overall direction of the world, and just what a bizarre time to have a pandemic go down just the way it did. Just so many different things behind it. But I really was surprised to see that the pandemic got turned into a political issue, because I live in South Korea, and we squashed we squashed the pandemic very, very early on. I mean, from day one, everyone is like, we got to defeat this thing. It's a national, like, we got to get united behind this, like, and I've told people the coronavirus doesn't care if you're liberal or conservative, if you're white, if you're black, if you're rich or poor, doesn't care about that. It's like, viruses don't see any of that stuff. So the fact that something like this could get politicized just shows us, really speaks to where we're at as I don't want to say just as Americans, but I think, people just inside of ourselves, there's just this conflict that's going on in ourselves that gets sometimes externalized with other people. So I do want to ask you, what is a way you think we could, just get past where we are and just move on, as you say, begin again? How do we begin again to get away from the, just the hatred, the disrespect? That's why this podcast is called Respect, Humility, and Empathy, because we're not going to agree on everything. In fact, it's impossible to agree on everything. I can't even agree with myself all the time. So the likelihood that I'm going to agree with you on something else, on everything, is impossible. It's statistically impossible. But how do we have respect? How do we have, empathy, and just understand were there other humans out there who have the same kind of struggles as I am, and so on,
Well, I think
your thoughts.
I think you have to look at the cultures. If I've traveled extensively in Europe, and I've been to Japan, and I see the difference between the cultures, in places that I feel are what's the word I want? Inspired. No, places that get things right.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the people believe that the common good is at least as important, if not more important, than the individual good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
America has fallen farther and farther from that paradigm. And in America, the individual is all that counts.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a cultural thing that's been going on for 100 years. I mean, it wasn't the case in 1776, but it is the case now. It's people feel like their interests are more important than the interests of the neighbors.
Mm.
And I think this comes from misinformation. I think it comes from lack of education. I think it comes from lack of worldview. You go to Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone gets, in most of Western Europe, people get 6 weeks off in the summer to travel.
Mm-hmm.
And they travel extensively.
Mm-hmm.
And they love other cultures, and they go all over,
Mm-hmm.
all over the world, and explore and embrace other cultures. In America, there's so many people that have never been outside their county.
Right.
Certainly outside their state.
Right.
And the amount of disdain for foreign cultures only due to ignorance is symptomatic of what's going on in America. It's like we don't travel. We don't embrace the other cultures. We think we're better than they are. And
Wow.
most of the people in the world don't think they're better than everybody else.
Right.
Most of the people in the world, believe that the common good is the best thing.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't have an answer. I don't know how it's going to change.
No, well, that's it. Honestly, so I'm a member of a website called Couchsurfing. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it, but we get to put your couch or floor or bed up for like where people can come stay in it. And I've hosted about 300 people all over the world. So
Awesome.
I've actually went to Europe. Like, so when I go traveling, I could go to 50 different countries, and the people are just waiting to host me to make up for the hospitality that I've shown them. I was in Israel for a month, and I think 3 days I needed to stay at a hotel because the other time I was just popping around with people who had hosted before. So that, if you were to ask me, that would be the number one way I would say to promote empathy, because if I went in Israel, I went and stayed at a mosque. I'm a Christian, but I stayed at a mosque for a week there. And I found these people to be the most hospitable, humble, gentle souls I've ever met in my life. And I'm telling you this as a Christian, so I think when you start to stop dehumanizing people and start to say, hey, you know what? We may have a different religion, we may have a different color, but at the end of the day, one of the most universal things I found, and man, I might tear up talking about this, is that I found that everybody wants something better than what they had growing up for their children. That to me has been one of the most universal things I've ever seen, that regardless where you're at, that maybe things might not change for my generation, but for my children, you want something better for them. And
I have to interject, because I don't mean to disparage American people.
Right.
Everybody I've ever met, and I've worked and met people from all kind of walks of life, and they're all wonderful people. Mm-hmm. Individually, I think the misinformation, and I think the internet has given voice to tiny segments of our population and made them seem like they're incredibly important. People who, you're probably going to want to edit this all out, but anyway,
no,
the internet has given voice. Everybody has an equal voice. Dan Rather, or whoever the president is, they have an equal voice to some nut who believes some crazy stuff. And
right.
And
well, and it's easier to network with fellow conspiracy theorists. It's very easy. I mean, all of a sudden QAnon, and I'm starting to see friends and family and neighbors with the little QAnon stuff on their profile picture and making these wacky posts, and you're like, what the heck is going on here? And yeah, it's insane. And yeah, I think the critique about American culture is frankly spot on. As an American, I see this. We're taught to work our fingers to the bone. We don't even get to keep what we produce. So we're working for the man, if you will. He keeps everything. I get just what I need to survive. And we really need to break this down, because the consequences are, frankly, they're grave. In fact, they're already dire. And we're seeing the consequences when you look at our interventions, and when you look at the fact that we have nuclear weapons and, that are on a hair trigger ready to go at a moment's notice. And we really have to break down this toxic element in our society. We have to break down this toxic compound. I guess
Right.
if I had a question for you, or maybe it's a challenge, maybe it's a prompt, I don't know. But can music be part of the solution? Can we write an anthem, maybe not a revolutionary anthem, but something that inspires us to kind of wake up and start to see things differently? You know, I know they tried this with the Super Bowl advertising. There were a lot of commercials, although I barely watched, but there were a lot of commercials about unity, you know, inspiring Americans to kind of get back to the center. Bruce Springsteen did one such commercial.
Right.
And I'm wondering, do you think that maybe music could be part of this? I personally, I kind of feel it would play a critical role. But what's your take?
Music has always been a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Music and art has always led the way in changing the world,
Mm-hmm.
and informing people.
There's always a drummer, you know, with the army.
The
You
you know, the problem that I think that is a basis for all of these things that we're talking about, is it can be traced back to a certain Republican president who decided to remove taxes on the rich people, and thereby started this inexorable slope to poor people getting poorer and rich people getting richer.
Mm-hmm.
The gap between the rich and the poor is, in my mind, the cause of everything
Wow.
that is happening today.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
The system.
People won't look to buy into conspiracy theories if they're happy in their life.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Um,
That's so.
people won't try to overthrow the government if they're happy in their life.
Mm-hmm.
But to go back to your question, yes, music has always been a powerful force to make change, and it still is, and will continue to be.
Speaking of overthrowing the government, I wish I could say that I was surprised by that, but literally for the last 5 years, I've been telling people that this is going to happen. Like I predicted this 5 years ago, and so I wasn't in the slightest sense of the word surprise. I mean, of course, it's shocking. Literally, I remember just seeing some of it, just like this is like going down. This is actually happening right now, and I was shocked. Quite frankly, to see the people actually inside of the, and especially how brazen they were. I think that was probably the most surprising thing of it all, because let's just say if I was doing that, I would have been wearing a mask, if not for the corona, like to not be seen. You know, it's like these people were actively broadcasting it, and I want to know what you think would be like maybe like a reasonable punishment, or should maybe even a punishment be appropriate right now? Just, obviously I think the impeachment starting up right now. Is it starting today or tomorrow?
Tomorrow. Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Tuesday.
Well, here's my answer.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Here's my answer. You throw a black teen in jail for 20 years for stealing a candy bar 3 times in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to let these punks off? No, they should receive the full brunt of the law. The justice system in this country and all over the world is messed up.
Mm-hmm.
The richer you are, the easier it is.
Mm-hmm.
It has to change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if the only penalty for breaking the law is a fine, then the law only exists for the poor.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you another question specifically, because I'm a Christian, and Marshall is an atheist, and we we have some ideas. I think we both were very open about the fact that we don't have all the answers. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I could tell you, if we were to have a conversation about God and I didn't say I don't know at least 5 or 6 times, then I would be flat out lying, because then I would just have to be putting in a lot of filler. There's a lot of, if you ask me where God come from, I mean, I simply don't have the answer to that. If you ask me why did this X, Y, and Z happen in the Bible, I don't have the answer for that. If Marshall had some questions about, he sent me some questions to ask me. The reality is a lot of the questions I just don't know. So, but do you think that part of the this certainty that you have all the answers can contribute to, like a feeling that we're the righteous, we're the ones, we need to put forth God's law, and we need to subject everyone else who doesn't believe? Do you think that kind of like dogmatism has played into it? And also, just if you could enlighten us, you had mentioned above, as far as writing, were you just speaking like your internal self, or maybe some kind of creator that's out there in the universe that maybe you don't personally know? I'm sorry, loaded question again.
Well, I think organized religion is probably the evilest thing that humans have ever invented. I do not. I do not. I'm not an atheist. If anything, I'm an animist.
Okay.
I believe that it would be good to feel like the universal consciousness inhabits everything around us, and we should treat everything around us as if it were God. I believe in science. I read physics. I don't have an answer as to whether there was a creator. I will guarantee you, in my mind, if there was a creator, he looks nothing like us. But I think that the problem with most religions is that in their teachings, or in the belief of their congregations, they believe that their way is the only way and the right way, and that everybody else should suffer for it. And this has created the most horrendous killings and wars and persecutions and genocide in history. It just has.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would suggest that if there is a creator, he would rather that we all do away with an organized religion.
Marshall, you got to follow up for that? It's kind of hard to follow up after that.
Yeah, I don't know if I quite have a question. Just to be clear with folks, I am what I call an agnostic atheist, in that I can't conclusively say that there's no higher power or creative entity or whatever. I'm very skeptical of it. So I have to be intellectually honest, which requires me to state that I'm technically agnostic on the question of God. But then I tell everybody I'm an atheist in your religion, which means I'm probably not going to believe in your religion. Because at some point, when you go from the concept of a creator God to a specific permutation of that God who wants you to do this, that, and the other thing, and attend church at this particular, geographical coordinates every Sunday between the hours of 9 and 11.
And give them all your savings.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You can't make that logic chain for me. You just can't. It doesn't work. At some point, you have to commit a host of logical fallacies to go from this general vague concept of that's just a possibility to the specific. Yet these people who are specific about their faith are very particular about what you can and cannot do and how you should do it and so on. So nobody has yet passed the challenge of telling me, of kind of connecting that logic chain without committing a logical fallacy. The instant someone does, I am required actually to adopt that system of belief. But so far, the challenge, the Marshall Soul X Prize, remains unclaimed, if you will. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
No, I don't have a question. I agree quite a bit with Mark. I don't think I'm so much an animist, but I do think that we need to treat the world, treat nature, all that's in it, with some degree of care and compassion. And if there is a creator, if there is a God, I would love to meet her, because I have a lot of questions.
I personally, I'm a Christian, but I grew up in a Christian home. My parents are ministers, but I basically was like what they call like the prodigal son. I went overseas and did a lot of drugs and wine and song and lots of crazy nights. But I did wind up finding a faith at a much later stage in my life, at the age of 32, and it did wind up changing my life significantly. But I mean, if I were to be honest, that is one of the most troubling elements of Christianity that I would have to say everyone else is wrong. And just so you know, like, I just want to show you this real quick. Like, I got like all the world religions tattooed, like neck to foot. I mean, I have everything on me. And but I have found, as I said, I have went down into mosques and to temples and to stayed with Buddhists and learn about them. And so I have seen that there's, people, every religion, they're just trying to be, people are striving to be better versions of themselves. And that may take the different forms. And I just thank God that I'm not God, because I wouldn't want to try to sort everything out. And I certainly would never want to send someone to hell for picking the wrong religion, So with that being said, I heard through the grapevine that you're going to be playing us a song, Mark. Okay, let's hear it.
All right.
I'm going to have to.
All right. I'm going to be treated.
Let's see. Does that look like a piano?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, what's that in the background? What are those in the top right? Is that drums?
Well, that's my drum rack, yeah.
Nice.
Those are the drums I
Okay.
use to. When I'm recording, I like to have a lot of drums. And so I should. All right. Well, here we go. What key is this in? It's a damn fine day to be sitting here in our living room in America, the TV on, we watch the dawn, the damn fine day. It's a damn fine day to be proud again, believe once more things can change. So bang the drum, put the music on. It's a damn fine day. The hopes we hope, the dreams we dream, we've pushed aside for so long. The fears we fear will bury us. This morning they were gone. It's a damn fine day to raise a glass. This evening, the longest night has passed. It's a damn fine day. It's a damn fine day.
Wow. Wow.
That's great. What a treat.
Yeah, I
Thank
love
you.
seeing the transformation, like when people start playing music and it's like they become a completely, they're like, they get into, it's like they get possessed. So Mark,
Yeah.
I really, 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 really want to thank you for your time. That
Thank
was
you. Yeah.
I really appreciate your opinion, and just thank you for taking this small amount of time to contribute your voice to what we're doing here. And thank you for that song, man. That was really good.
Yeah. Thank
Well,
you.
thank
Your
you so
wisdom.
much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you
Greatly.
both of you for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank
All
you.
right. Well, we look forward to seeing you again at R.H.E.
Thank you all.
podcast.
Thank you.